outdoor appearance from our Congresswoman Deb Haaland, so I'll be handing it off to her shortly. Then we're going to hear from some updates from our chiefs, meaning of fire and police, and that's primarily around site locations, right? So from a city perspective, we're concerned about election site protection. That's obviously different than ballots and whatnot, which would be the county and clerk and so forth. But we do have some folks here from the Secretary of State's office. We'll introduce in a little bit. He's going to talk about some of that. And also from our Attorney General. Emphasis on the word our, that'd be New Mexico's Attorney General Hector Balderas. We're going to have an announcement or some information from his Office of Civil Rights as well. Now, as a little bit of a small thing we don't want to talk about right away, we've been getting a lot of questions on the United today, the soccer team. And so Lawrence, Rael, and I are going to take those after. So when we're done, we're going to pause, let folks go who need to go, and then Lawrence and I will stick around and we'll kind of do a redo if you have questions about the United Stadium. Okay, so with that, let me begin, of course, by saying that election season is upon us. And we're all doing the best we can to get ready in what is one of the most unique elections in American history. Of course, we have a highly charged presidential election at the top of the ballot, but we also have in our state every state legislator up for re-election, and we also have, of course, a pandemic going on. So there is really no way to overemphasize how unique and how important this election is. We kind of say that every year, but this year it is absolutely true, I think, by definition. So, of course, free and fair elections are core to our democracy, and we had a call with all the mayors from around the country. There were, I think, 107 mayors and police chiefs on a conference call 2 days ago that discussed different issues around election site protection for cities around the country. And we know that cities in places like Texas are already voting, and so the cities that were already voting were sharing issues they're having with cities that were just really starting. And there's a wide range of challenges, right? And we know that there are things that our experts from our county clerk to our Secretary of State will touch on with respect to elections. But we also know there's issues around safety, around intimidation, even around basic things like traffic and open hours and all of this. So we're all working together at every level of government. The Secretary of State and the county clerks have done a great job in New Mexico. I want to emphasize setting up for this election. I'm honored to be the mayor of this city and be able to say that they are, Secretary of State and county clerk are running the elections, and so far to date just doing an outstanding job. And again, they have in the past, and so we've got a really good track record on this. So we know there's been shenanigans in all sorts of other cities, but we also know Albuquerque and New Mexico, the metro area, Bernalillo County, we're different. We actually tend to do this hopefully and usually in a much, much better way than a lot of other areas around the country. And so we're all preparing to keep our elections safe and also to make sure as many people can vote as possible. Now, we want to help everyone to not fall prey to any kind of voter suppression or intimidation tactics or worse. We know that there are examples around the country of both of those, of suppression and intimidation happening, and we want to stand firmly against that in every department, in every way, at every level of government in the Albuquerque metro area. Now, we want to encourage everyone for election-specific interaction or information. Please contact and look at all the wonderful information the Bernalillo County Clerk has available, as well as our New Mexico Secretary of State. But we want to remind everyone that it is illegal in all 50 states, and this was core to the call that I had with other mayors. It is illegal in all 50 states for armed militias to exist, let alone watching a poll location. So our chief of police is going to touch on that, and our district attorney's office here in Bernalillo County has done a great job training up law enforcement to really understand the rules and regulations around that kind of intimidation. And so our chief of police will touch on that briefly. If you witness any groups doing any kind of intimidation, you can always start by calling 311, but we also want to encourage people to call the Common Cause Election Protection Hotline. They're tracking this nationally. It's important that everyone participates, including New Mexico, and we're asking them to call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. And we want to encourage everyone to remain peaceful throughout early voting and as we get closer to Election Day. So now with a message, well, it's not a message because it's her in person, I want to introduce our Congresswoman, Deb Haaland. Congresswoman Haaland.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be out for a change and not in front of a computer on a Zoom call. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for hosting this press conference on this important topic. Thank you for caring about our voters. So all of you know, early voting has already started, and this year is an historic election year. It's incredibly important that every eligible voter make their voice heard. I'm an organizer at heart. For nearly 2 decades, I registered voters, knocked on doors, and made phone calls to get out the vote. As an organizer, I definitely know voter suppression when I see it, and we've seen it across the country. People waiting in line for 11 hours. Closing polling locations early, saying that you need a certain address on your ID before you're able to vote. So we know that these things are detrimental to everyone's right to vote. Ongoing voter suppression efforts undermine our democracy and disproportionately impact communities of color. New Mexico took a huge step to combat voter suppression efforts by allowing voters to register in person on the day of voting. I introduced the federal same-day voter registration bill, which was included in the House's For the People Act last year, so voters and the rest of the country can follow the lead of New Mexico. As our country battles the risks of a pandemic, we need the resources to make sure no one has to choose between their health and practicing their right to vote. The funding that Congress provided in the CARES Act helped install drop boxes for absentee ballots so voters can participate in the general election in ways that minimize human contact and reduce the risks of COVID-19 transmission. It's why we included safeguards for our democracy in the updated HEROES Act that passed the House in September that will ensure safe elections and preserve the Postal Service. I'm proud New Mexicans are getting out to vote in record numbers in early voting right here in our district. It shows that New Mexicans take their right to vote seriously and they're showing up to the polls. In other cities, voter intimidation has become a problem. I know that as New Mexicans, we respect each other and those tactics will not work here. We have a mayor and a city government who take this issue seriously, and the city of Albuquerque will have an all-hands-on-deck approach to protect Burqueños and their right to vote. I'm incredibly proud of these efforts that will make sure voters can safely cast their ballots, and I'll close by saying voting is sacred. I want every voter to cast their ballots in a safe way, and I really appreciate you all being here and echoing those sentiments. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman. We're very fortunate to have you leading our charge up in Washington, D.C., and for spending some time with us today. Thank you for your leadership. Let me introduce our fire chief, Chief Dow. Where is it? There we go.
All right, so thank you. We're obviously very thrilled to see so many people that are involved and excited about the election itself. Albuquerque Fire Rescue prepares for large events, just like this, whether they be emergency events, non-emergency events throughout the year. It could be Balloon Fiesta, it could be Summer Fest, and our number one priority is always the safety of the community. So whether it be pre-incident planning for the structures themselves, incident action planning, whatever involvement, the number one priority is to make sure that the community is safe. We prepare for this just like a lot of other events, and we want to make sure the community understands we are prepared and we are not panicked. Thank you.
Okay, and now I want to introduce our interim chief of APD, interim Chief Medina.
The Albuquerque Police Department is committed to ensure that we have officers available on election day if they are needed to keep the peace. Our goal is to ensure the public can safely go to polling sites free of any kind of intimidation. We will not have a heavy presence, and we do not want to alarm voters but we want to ensure that we have the resources available if the need arises. We are making sure that our officers understand election laws and that their interaction with election officials and police is clear and concise. Our officers are trained in de-escalation, and if necessary, we'll de-escalate situations. We are working with making sure that all of our resources are available during that day and that evening if necessary, and we could bring individuals in. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And a little bit around some election and polling, our own City Clerk, Ethan Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 18 early vote locations and 70 Election Day voting locations across the county. For information about where to go vote, please visit burncovotes.org. Just a reminder, many polling locations are schools and at least one is a city community center. Please do not bring guns or deadly weapons into these locations. You may be asked to leave. Because campaigning isn't allowed in polling locations, you shouldn't wear t-shirts or carry any materials that advocates for a candidate or party when you go vote. You will be asked to remove any campaign materials when you enter the voting location. The county will have masks available if you forget to bring one, so no one will be turned away for lack of access to a mask. And the Secretary of State's office is here today, and they'll talk about their guidance on masks. But as we see the spike in COVID-related infections, it's more important than ever to mask up. As the mayor mentioned, if you do experience any issues at voting locations that you believe could be construed as voting intimidation or reporting any issues about voting, or please contact 311 or the nonpartisan Common Cause hotline 866-OUR-VOTE. Thank you.
Okay, now the core to elections is also understanding and recognizing that there are strong equity issues around our elections and challenges that have been with us in many cases for centuries, and others that are new. And so we do want to speak to that. We're fortunate in the city of Albuquerque to have an Office of Equity and Inclusion. And so I do want to introduce the director of that office, Michelle Melendez. Michelle?
I know many of you, like me, are thinking and planning for what might happen during the election day. And we are a city with strong values. We stand up for what's right, our birthrights to dignity and sovereignty, and a representative government that is accountable to all its constituents and for the public good. One of the ways that we're promoting participation in our election is for Senior Affairs is partnering with the New Mexico Black Voters Collaborative, a nonpartisan coalition of Black-led organizations in partnership with the New Mexico Black Leadership Council to give voters 50 and over a free, safe ride to their nearest polling location starting tomorrow between 10 and 3. And so to get a reservation on one of our Senior Affairs vehicles, residents 50 and over should call 764-6464. And we know that a safe and fair election is a key part of our country's democratic process. We also know it will not come easy. We have to safeguard our election integrity. Organizing and protest is a key part of our democratic process when it is in peril. And we will continue to safeguard our right to protest without threat of violence on the part of any militia or anyone else. That is a part of our civil rights history and of our DNA. Many of you have been able to count on APD and the city for traffic control during protests and service requests. When you see something unsafe, you call. And we want to encourage those open lines of communication so that we can keep our city safe. I recognize the challenges of this given some of our recent history, but people's safety really has to come first. Our city wants to do everything we can to promote people's safety. We will be reaching out to organizers and community groups and asking what we can do and plan for together and how we can best help in the moment. We will be answering the protest information hotline that my office set up this summer and connecting callers to the appropriate people. I'll answer calls myself as much as I can, and I'll be assisted by my staff, which includes Native American Affairs, African American, Immigrant, and Refugee Affairs. And we will do our best to help. The number to call for protest-related information is 269-5927. While the city doesn't issue protest permits at this time because of the pandemic, we recognize people's First Amendment rights, and anyone who calls to speak with our staff will also get information about what's legal in terms of guns and weapons and what's not, and how they can take all the safety precautions if they are going to have a protest. We're also working on a protest fact page for our website, and that will include information from today's press conference. We truly appreciate all the people taking part in our democratic process in all of its dimensions at such a critical juncture in our nation's history, and we want a good outcome for our beloved city. Thank you.
Okay, and now we are, I'll wait for that truck to clear out here. We're also joined by Alex Curtis, the Director of Communications from the Secretary of State's office. That's the state level, Maggie Toulouse-Oliver. Alex?
Hi there, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for having me here today. Like Mayor Keller said, my name is Alex Curtis. I'm the Director of Communications for Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse-Oliver, who could not be here today, but definitely wanted to have someone from our office here, and that's why I'm here with you today. I just want to say a couple things from the state perspective of what kind of our main messages are for voters in the election. The first thing that voters really should know, that we want them to know from our office, is there are multiple easy ways for you to vote in this election, no matter how you choose to do so. So if you're going to vote by absentee ballot, you can obviously do that. You can drop your absentee ballot off at any polling location in your county. You can vote in person during early voting, like we've already talked about today. Wider early voting locations open up tomorrow, October 17th. So you can drop your absentee ballot at any polling location in your county. And then, of course, there is in-person early voting and in-person voting on Election Day. And so voters should really know that there are multiple easy ways to cast your ballot in this election, and we want you to do so, obviously. And our next main message from the Secretary of State's perspective, definitely, because we've already seen some of this in this election, is the countering of misinformation, and the press has a big role to play in this as well. Use trusted sources for election information. Your county clerk, your Secretary of State's office are great resources. If you see something online that does not come from a trusted source, do not just believe it without investigating or passing it by your county clerk or your Secretary of State. So these are some really important things that we want voters to know. Also, that nmvote.org is a great resource. It's the state-level voter information portal, and you can go there. You can download a sample ballot, find polling locations, track your absentee ballot. This is a big thing this year with so many absentee ballots being requested. Just so you know, as of this morning, we're over 365,000 New Mexicans have requested an absentee ballot. Over 183,000 New Mexicans have already voted in this election. But if you are looking for voter information, like some of the city representatives said before, there are county websites as well that are great, but also nmvote.org. You can get lots of voting information there, and we would encourage you to do so. And with that, I'm obviously happy to take questions if need be after we get through the speakers, because I know there's a lot on the state level as well that people might want to talk through. So again, thanks to the city of Albuquerque for having the Secretary of State's office here today, and I'll turn it over.
Okay, and let's see, there's, of course, we mentioned, I'm turning this up a little bit, various civil rights issues always come to play in any election cycle, and especially in this one. And so from our Office of the Attorney General, the Chief of the Civil Rights Bureau, Jenny Lusk.
Thank you, Mayor and Congresswoman. I'm here from the Attorney General's office, which has statewide jurisdiction, And I'm going to put out one more number for everybody. The Attorney General has established a statewide hotline that's 505-318-1008, 318-1008. And if you see something statewide, report it, call it to us. We're so pleased that there is such a good amount of coordination with law enforcement and areas of government from state and federal and local. And we welcome the ability to help people all over the state be able to exercise their right to vote. And the Attorney General's main message in all of this is that every qualified person who can vote should be able to vote securely, safely, and with no intimidation. So we're very much in appreciation of all that the mayor's doing here and all that everybody's doing statewide, including the Secretary of State. And also on our website, nmag.gov, like New Mexico Attorney General.gov, there's a 7-page primer on all of the laws about who can be at the polling place, who's an observer, who's a watcher, and who's in charge of the locations. So if anybody wants to see that, just go to our website, nmag.gov. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone for being here today, and of course, we'll provide additional updates as needed at different levels on different topics as we go through the next few weeks here in Albuquerque. I do want to mention some other small facts just to remind everyone that our transit department does offer free fares on our bus system on Election Day to try and get to the polls. And I just also want to say that I think in New Mexico we have a really great election team, from our clerk to the Secretary of State and to even our DA's office and our Attorney General. I think we're very, very well positioned compared to a lot of other states. And I believe that there is full confidence, everyone should have full confidence in voting by mail. My First Lady Liz did that yesterday. And also, I plan on early voting probably, but I might even do it on Election Day. So I'm a believer that all of these are wonderful ways to vote, and all of them are safe, and all of them will make sure in New Mexico that your vote is counted. Okay, so I think with that, we'll take some questions. And what I'll do, I'll try and direct them to the relevant person, and we'll see how that goes. If we need to kind of split up into groups, we might do that, but we'll just see how it goes. So, Jessica? Wow, no in-person questions. I know you're waiting for us to talk one-on-one, so it's okay.
Yeah, after what happened with the city council last night about the community safety department, can you just kind of respond to what happened given the amendments to the budget plan and what working with the council looks like moving forward?
Sure, yeah, this question is relevant to our new community safety department that was really what we mentioned this summer as a alternative to 911, so that responses are not just handled by fire or police. They're the right response, a trained social worker, a paramedic, mental health professional, the right response at the right time. And so our city is actually at the forefront of putting this together across the country. And we know actually it's going to take a lot of experimentation, and we're going to have to, it's going to evolve as it goes along. So I think, look, we wanted to move fast and bold and innovative, and I think council wants to move in a little more gradual manner, and that's okay. So we'll basically work with them and meet them in the middle, and we both have the same end goal, so I'm not really concerned about it, and we'll flesh out the details too when the budget gets to my desk. That's really when we can work through some of that, and right now we'll work closely with them, and we'll adjust things if needed even down the road. All right, so let's do this. I know there's, just to help out Congresswoman's team, maybe talk to this group over here if you're looking for a Congresswoman. Otherwise, Jessica, and if you are here for United, just give us about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. Sure.
Yeah, isn't it true? I've never been so grateful for those connected to